waiting for Aron to come back.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our live chat. I just wanted to let you guys know we have a technical difficulty here, but I think we're getting around it. So Aron had to leave the room and he's coming back for it to work. Actually, the problem, I think it was here, but anyway, let's just wait for him to come back. By the way, just wanted to ask you guys, where are you from? Can you just present yourselves? Hi, Julie. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Jeff, Jim. Really sorry to leave you guys waiting, but you know, things happen. Aloha. Oh, aloha. Josh from Seattle. Sam. Okay. Just waiting for Sam to come back. By the way, which one of you guys have seen the teaser for our documentary? What do you think? What do you guys think of it? Are you following the Facebook page? Thanks a lot, my friend. Okay. Who else liked it? Only Jeff? I mean, I'm gonna get depressed here. We're just getting in contact with Aron to try to put him back in. I think there's something wrong with his link. So just give us a couple more minutes and we get the party started. Okay? Anyway, just wanted to ask you guys, who you think we should interview next for a documentary? Aron Ra is gonna be in it. Amazing Randy is gonna be in it. So just wanted to get some ideas here. Who can help us? Sam Harris, yeah. Actually, we tried Sam Harris, and I want to try again. But the thing is, when we shot these interviews for the documentary, it was really close to that event, in real time with Bill Maher when they had the discussion with Ben Affleck. So I think he wanted to lay low and didn't like, uh, be on the spotlight that much. So I respect that, but I'll try to get him because I really respect him. Aaron is cool, is the best, yeah, and he's gonna give us an interview. And Amazing Randy, I mean, how cool is that? I just ran into him at the Reason Rally. When I talked to him, was like the nicest guy ever, one of the most accessible people in the event, even though he's like the Pope to us. So we had a really cool chat. And here we got Aaron back. Welcome.
Hey.
Yeah, we interrupt this program for an unscheduled technical difficulty.
All right.
Okay. So yeah, Aaron is back. Before we had to start over, we were just talking about the situation that we're facing now as atheists in America and around the world, like where we're coming from and where are we going. So Aaron, please just share your views with us.
We're on this time?
Yep,
Okay.
definitely.
All right. What was the question again?
Yeah, well, where do you see us going?
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying that
Wounded animals.
yes. My
Remember
father told me when I was a little kid that there's nothing more dangerous than a wounded animal, and that religion is definitely a wounded animal, mortally wounded, and this is because of the internet. And one of the reasons why, as I'd mentioned previously before the show went down, I'll go ahead and repeat, is that I was told a lot of nonsense stories that were meant to compel my belief. People telling me about what the mysterious they had found, all of this evidence that nobody can look into, stories that nobody can verify. I mean, you could, if you really wanted to go down to the public library and try to look up a microfiche of ancient newspapers and stuff like that, but you're likely never going to find the details that people are telling me. It's the same with many urban legends. Even when we have the internet and you try to look up these urban legends, some of them are difficult to find, or they happened in places that they weren't supposed to have happened in, or something like that. So many of the details may be wrong. But my favorite example of that is that people used to tell me, as evidence of the Great Flood, they would tell me that there was millions of mammoths that had been found flash frozen, where they had tropical flora in their mouths, and something, I don't know how this is supposed to indicate that there was ever a flood, but so that the environment froze so much that they had tropical food that they were eating, and then suddenly they're flash frozen as they are, and then they're discovered 10,000 years later or however long it is. But the thing is, when you look up the story, you find out that there are millions of mammoths in the permafrost, but they're not frozen intact. There's only 51 that have been found that had flesh still on them that you could thaw out and potentially eat. All of these had died before they were frozen. Some of them had been desiccated, like being eaten by wolves partially and all like that before they were frozen. And the tropical flora wasn't tropical. It was tulips, which of course is a far northern thing, like from Denmark or something. So these are certainly not tropical. So no part of that story turns out to be true. Well, this is the true of everything that you try to look up for the internet. Famously, well, we're not going to go into Sanal because you talked to him before, but we've seen other cases like Sanal brings up. We have the statues that are weeping or whatever, and then the tears from the statue turn out to be from a backed up toilet or something like that. And this is common with throughout investigating.
But the problem is that when you point that out, that's when the problem starts.
I've heard many times that these may be what the facts are, but I prefer to believe this. And why won't you let me believe what I want to believe? It's because people don't want to understand what is really true. Understanding is out the window because understanding requires knowledge, and maybe that requires learning it. And maybe there's a thing where you actually have some credibility attached to it. They don't want that. They want to be.
It's a lot easier to think that Grand Canyon is a result of the Great Flood, right?
Well, let me give you another example.
Look at it.
I had an online argument with these people where I said, hypothetically, let's say that some future technology is invented that can detect the properties of God and verify that God exists. And by being able to verify that God exists, we can also verify the properties of God. What kind of God is it, right? So that we'll know for certain. And these people objected Because when they say they have a personal deity, they mean extremely personal. It is exactly what they say it is, and no two Christians will agree with each other exactly. But it's what their God is what they say their God is, and there can't be an objectively verifiable God, because then it won't be what people expected it to be. And if it's not what they expected it to be, then to hell with it. This is the way people are with their personal deity. Haven't you noticed that God hates all the same things that you do for all the same reasons that you do?
Well, and depending on the culture, God always have the same physical resemblance of the people that they created. You know, that's such a coincidence, right?
Jesus Christ and Elvis Presley have this in common, that they can change races depending on the black velvet painting they're painted on.
It's true. It's funny because whenever people bring that up, you know, what kind of God is this? What would be the God? And they say, well, a God that, let's take the Gator attack in Orlando. I mean,
are you talking about the one with the Gator attack? You're talking about the 2-year-old that was...
Yeah. So, you know, to have that kind of, I mean, vicious and gruesome attack, and have parents try to save the child, and like, this is just a horror movie, I mean, condensed.
That is a pretty devastating thing to even imagine.
Now, just imagine if, like, 2 seconds before the alligator like grabs the kid, another bigger alligator comes along and bites this alligator and saves the kid. People would say, God saved the kid. So, yeah. But God didn't.
Yeah.
So what kind of God doesn't send the other alligator to do that?
And have you noticed that all these miracles, I mean, what is a miracle? A miracle is supposed to be something that can't be explained, right? But every miracle is something that can be explained. It can just as easily be mistaken for a natural cause. I mean, if the World Trade Center was attacked by these airplanes, and the airplanes just cruise to a slow stop and remain hovering in the air next to the tower, and then gently land on the ground so that the police can raid and arrest the people inside. That would be inexplicable by any means other than a miracle. That would have to be a miracle, but that doesn't happen. Nothing like that ever happens. And prophecy doesn't happen either, because people didn't prophesy. I mean, people actually warned the government that there was going to be some kind of attack, right? But they couldn't be specific, and prophecies can't be specific either. And whenever a prophecy is specific, it fails all the time. I mean, Christians always bring up, oh, prophecies is what is our greatest proof. Well, okay, well, then look at, I think it's Ezekiel, who said that there would be this 40-year period during the reign of Nebuchadnezzar where there would be no men and no animals at all in the entirety of Egypt. Not one man, not one hoof would set foot in that property. That never happened. The prophecy failed, and it's not the only one. There's several prophecies that have failed, and quite brilliantly failed. I mean, outstandingly. But there's a confirmation bias where they won't accept the failures of their prophecy, and where they'll say, okay, well, if somebody was killed in a car crash, it was the Lord moves in mysterious ways. The Lord needs another angel. If the guy survives but is crippled his whole life, well, God
wants to give this guy a purpose.
Yeah, God spared his life, right? Well, and if he survives without injury, oh, God does a miracle. But God does a miracle, regardless what happens.
He becomes a Paralympic athlete. And wins a gold medal. Yeah. Well,
there's always got to be some excuse by which God skirts by, right? So I mean, there's nothing that we can absolutely attribute to God, like the example of the airplanes that I was just talking about. There's not instance of people being able to fly or have Herculean powers in desperate moments or anything. None of that happens. What we have, the best argument that people have, are the near-death experiences, none of which can be verified, but they can be invalidated. And what ends up happening with people that are raised in different religions have experience that matches their religions. And if they're raised with no religion at all, there's no experience at all. It's entirely culturally ingrained, whatever the brain goes through in these moments of great stress. So they've got absolutely nothing to go on. So I mean, you've got, and I say this all the time, that all the claims that any religion makes, they fall into only one of two categories: not evidently true and evidently not true.
True. And one thing I find really interesting is like coincidences, right? Whenever something really like the start of Magnolia, the film, like all those crazy things happen. And people thought, oh, you know, something like this happened. I mean, the guy was falling and he fell right in the spot that wouldn't kill him or something like that. It has to be God. And I was like, well, you know, if there wasn't a coincidence, nobody would ever win the lotto, you know, the lottery, you know. So I mean, these things happen, but people just want to give meaning to it, you know, see something in it that you know that isn't there. I just wanted to ask you a question that I found really interesting from Marie. Uh, just wanted to know what you think about the fact that Pete Stark was the only sitting congressman to admit being an atheist while in office. And we actually had Barney Frank, right? He was elected, I think, in '89. And throughout his whole career, he was an open gay person. But only after he resigned, he came out as an atheist.
Because
So
being an unbeliever is so much worse than being gay.
exactly, just like now we get, you know, I interview people that said they had a much worse time coming out as atheists to their parents than coming out as gay people. So, but politically, and like in the political field, I mean, how long will it take for us to see some change?
Well, I'm expecting change to be much more rapid than what it was like with the civil rights movement. You know,
Me
as
too.
much as many people want to pretend otherwise, you know, we thought that maybe that we were past the whole racism thing here in the United States, you know, 20 years back or something like that. But then Barack Obama was elected, and then we get to see that we were wrong. No, racism is still hugely a thing with us. But I don't think the religious prejudice is going to be able to hold out that long, because they've got no justification. I mean, every month we see stories about atrocities being carried out in the name of religion, or kids dying because of, you know, negligence, because they don't get the medical treatment because their parents tried to pray the illness away, or they send them to some camp to pray the gay away, or what. You know, there's all kind of atrocities that are put on religion, but religion never has any good to present. There's manipulating people. There's ruining people's lives. They're getting in the way of everything. They're trying to establish where they want to say they want a small government, but they want a government that regulates everybody's personal life in the bedroom. You know, no, they don't talk about small government. They're talking about heavy duty government. They want to regulate and everything, to where they are trying to criminalize, you know, choices of not even choices, of conditions of orientation. You know, it's what religion does is deceive people, manipulate people, oppress people. It does not do any good. I'm an anti-theist. I find that religion is a net negative against humanity. It has never achieved a good purpose that can't be bested, or isn't already being bested by secular organizations like United Way or other such secular charities and things like that. When religion does something good for the community, it's usually as a PR stunt to cover all of the crimes and the corruption that they've been doing prior to that.
Or you know, something that could be replaced by therapy, or see you know, it's true. I mean, people.
We mentioned before that people say prophecies are the reason that they believe in God, or that they believe that near-death experiences are the reason to believe. A lot of people say changed lives because I used to be a drug addict. Well, so you changed one addiction for another.
Well, not only that, people come to me and people come to me and say, well, I was a drug addicted. I used to steal, you know, I was a bad person. But then I found you. So, well, listen, I never had to go through any of those problems. So I'm okay without Jesus, you know. I never robbed anyone, so okay, you know. But don't you think? I agree with you that I think change is coming, and I think it's going to come a lot faster than people think. And one of the signs for that, I mean, we're talking about millennials and how the internet is changing things very rapidly, but I find very curious, and this is something we're gonna put in the film, that Barack Obama was like the first president in a long time not to end the speech with "God bless America," and he got a hard time for it. But then
he was also the first president to mention atheists.
exactly, and people were like freaking out. You know, I say we are a country of Christians and Jews and Muslims and unbelievers, and people are like, I'm offended. You know, but he did it, and actually, you know who started the whole God Bless America thing?
Wasn't it? It was a Cold War reaction.
No,
to
actually, it was not. I mean, to finish, to end a speech with God Bless America, the first one to do it was Nixon. When in his first speech after Watergate broke up. So, and we have that footage, and it's so clear. I mean, he's like, he's really nervous. He doesn't know what to do with his hands, and by the end, he was like, you know, I'm in deep shit. So, God bless America, and God bless each and every one of you. So,
yeah.
so I really think that, you know, things are really starting to change, and despite the fact that maybe Reason Rally wasn't really that much of a success, the theme of like building this voting bloc, I think it has something to it, don't you?
I don't know what you mean by when the Reason Rally wasn't that much of a success. There wasn't the turnout that there was the first time, but I still had a good time. And I know everybody else that I talked to that was there certainly had a good time. Even the Christians that were there to protest it were having fun at that. So, I mean, we really need to do another one. And I agree with something that you'd said before, that the Reason Rally, where I understand the goal of being to make a positive public image for atheists, so that even politicians see us as a valid voting bloc, that if we're democratic, that the demographic that they need to appeal to, and that needs to happen. But maybe it needs to happen other ways than at a rally, where maybe we just want to do a concert for unbelievers and celebrate that we aren't religious and we don't have any of this baggage of ridiculous woo thinking. I'm completely down with that. I want there to be another Reason Rally because I've had fun at both of them. And I like the idea that the purpose of that event was to mock religion, and I'm certainly down with that.
It shouldn't take this long, right? 4 years is a long time.
4 years is longer than they expected it to be. And what I would like to see the next time they do this is I would like to see it more appealing to the grassroots. I mean, several other people have said that they think it's strange that and I'm not just promoting myself now, okay? But several people have said that even though the atheist movement is being run almost entirely on YouTube, there was not one YouTube personality. I mean, do you realize that Matt Dillahunty, the Atheist Experience, he was not at the first one either, and he wasn't at this one. You know, how so there's a huge oversight. If you don't get Matt Dillahunty at the atheist at a huge atheist rally like that, he should have been on stage, and he's not even a YouTuber. So, you know, get my other associate, Seth Andrews, you know, the Thinking Atheist. Absolutely, he should be up there, right? He's somebody that really connects with people on a human level. If you want a positive image for atheism, talk to Seth, or, you know, just put Seth on stage and let him speak. You know, because he is a positive image for atheism.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know what? And we had a real good time there too. And one of the best time I had was an interview with Pastafarian, and we actually did a little thing. We did an ad with some of the footage that we did with him. He was with the pasta drain, and he took like one of those old phone cords, you know, the curly ones, and he put it in, so it really looked like you know, the pasta. So Jasper asked us earlier. He wanted to know, what do you think about Pastafarians and like mixed religions, if they hurt atheist interest, in the sense that, because it's I don't personally agree with that, but I mean, what do you think about that? Because, and I think I could throw in as well Satanists, because we have like atheist Satanists, and I see that as two extremes of the same spectrum, in which Pastafarians turn their atheism into a joke, but to show the hypocrisy. But at the same time, as Satanists, they just go like full confrontational, because I mean, and there's one thing that I asked this Satanist at the Reason Rally, I mean, aren't you hated enough being an atheist, and you want to? So I said, yeah.
Right. I have to bring this up since you brought this up. I live in Dallas, where the first of the parody religions started here in like 1990 or 1992. And that was the Church of the Subgenius, the Church of Bob, Reverend J.R. Bob Dobbs. And I love the cult that has come of that. That's brilliant. I'm going to interview Ivan Stang as soon as I can get him to agree to that. I want to do an interview with that guy for starting this wonderful parody religion that I got so much laughter out of. The Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, the Pastafarians, they've hosted some really good events that I've attended. They've actually had Neil deGrasse Tyson at one of their events. He won't go to an atheist event, but he'll speak at a Pastafarian event, and that's pretty good. And then when you mention Satanists, I have the highest respect for Satanists, because the Satanic Temple under Lucian Graves has made some huge strides in terms of secular politics and in defense of the First Amendment, the freedom of religion. The Satanic Temple took on won rights in the Oklahoma State Court to the courthouse to get the 10 Commandments off their grounds. Right? They because if you're going to put this up, then you have to put up our statue of Baphomet as well, you know. And they've done that in a number of different places. I think they've threatened that Baphomet statue in like 3 different places, and they all, okay, well, the Satanists are involved now. And the Satanists came up with this other beautiful thing where they wanted to just hand out Christian pamphlets and tracts and stuff like a public school, and they say, well, this is just voluntary. This is not the school promoting it. It's completely separate from the school. We're just going to have this one table at this book fair that has all these religious tracts, and the children can go there if they want to, but they're not going to be directed to it. Well, the Satanists said exactly the same thing, except that they had these satanic coloring books, these brilliant satanic coloring books. We're just gonna, and they're moral and upright. They're not pornographic or anything. There's nothing evil about them. They're just the fact that they've got the pentacle on them and that they praise, satanic values, right? Isn't that great? Satanic values, and just put that on the table. The kids can go there if they want to. The school's not promote. So no, we're not going to have satanic paper. So we're not going to have Christian stuff either. So the Christians are really good here in the United States about having this freedom of religion, until they realize that freedom of religion applies to other religions too. So when they want to appeal to having faith-based schools, and then when they realize that Muslim schools would have the same rights and get the same access to funds, no, we got to be secular. Well, then why didn't they think of that in the first place? Yeah. Atheists are among the best defenders of freedom of religion. And the Christian, the religious right, don't realize that they are their own, literally, they are their own worst enemy in that regard. They need to see us as allies, and they need to follow us. We have legislators here in Texas that wanted to pass a law to ban Sharia law in Texas. They don't understand. They've already got the First Amendment. That's federal. That it protects them against Sharia law. But the thing is that they didn't want the First Amendment because they still want to have another law, a separate law, to promote Christianity. They're completely missing the point of both clauses of the First Amendment. Absolutely obtuse. So this is why we need atheist activists. And I think the Pastafarians are an excellent example of how to parody a religion and do it right. And the Satanic Temple are really good advocates of church-state separation.
It's funny that they are against Muslim theocracies, but at the same time, they'd like the Bible to be the U.S. Constitution. I mean,
confirmation bias and double standards.
They don't see the contradiction. I mean, this is just, it just amazes me, I mean, if you had to choose one issue to be like the most important issue right now, I mean, in our struggles, which one would you choose?
Oh, that's a tough call because there's so many. I mean, my pet thing is, the false education of children in school. And it's not just about teaching creationism. It's also about promoting different religious aspects through history class, through what they call American exceptionalism, and falsifying our history such that Moses becomes a historic character. But then they also try to undermine education by trying to censor sex education and then put in all of their moral value oppression.
It was a big deal at the recent rally.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, so there's that aspect. There's specifically creationism. Then there's everything else that they're trying to do in education. But it's really it's also all of the other types of oppression. What the religious right is doing to gays across the country. Just they're putting bombs and gunmen in restrooms. I mean, you realize that there were people going into the Target restrooms with guns for the purpose of shooting trans people, right? How sickening can religion get? And that's on the fringe, but on the mainstream, you have religion that is censoring sex education, as we said before, then cutting access to contraception, of course, trying to ban abortions. And when you cut sex education and all of the contraception, what are you going to produce? You're going to produce teen pregnancy, because abstinence only is a failure across the board, everywhere that it's practiced. So after they do that, after they create new teen mothers, they then try to systematically cut all of the programs.
But at first, it leads to anal sex, which is good. Then to pregnancy, you know, because they hold it as much as they can. Eventually, just let it go. Don't you agree?
So they create this like positive feedback loop, you know, but it's detrimental because they cut all the information and they cut all the contraception and everything else. And then when they have the extra babies from all these teenagers now pregnant because they weren't educated about, then they cut all the social welfare benefit programs that would have aided, you know, teenage mothers, you know, unwed mothers. And, you know, we have one of the highest rates of childhood poverty as a result of their sex education denial and all of that practice. I mean, just everything religion touches, when it gets into legislation, when it gets into politics and the law, it becomes an impediment to progress in every application. There's just no kind of good that it does, but everything it does turns bad.
You know, you mentioned bombs, and it reminded me of something that Micael told us in his interview, which was, you know, he's been trying to get in God we trust out of the currency and under God from the Pledge of Allegiance for a long time. And
what was his name? What was his name?
Micael Newdow.
Micael Newdow. Thank you.
Yeah, and well, he told us a story that he was at the post office with his daughter, and he was getting a package of some sort, and then he realized it was a bomb. And, you know, a bomb squad came in, blah, blah, blah. Eventually they found out it was a dud bomb. But it got me thinking, I mean, you put yourself out there, and would you get like hate mail? Do you get, what kind of reaction you get from Christians yourself? I mean, do you have any sort of story that, you know, was kind of...
Believers don't, I get hate mail, but it's always from within my own ranks. People will find some political difference or social difference with me, and they'll argue about the trivialities. I don't get people that are on the other side of the scale entirely that give me hate mail. I mean, I'll get negative comments on my videos from what are obvious trolls, you know, but really nothing more than that. I haven't seen any legitimate contests. And I've had people challenge me to debates, but it's always people that are unheard of, you know, unknowns trying to pull themselves up by somebody else's bootstraps.
Yeah.
So I just really don't get the opposition that I kind of expected to get. And I think I'm being judged on my appearance, I think, is actually partly what that is.
And what do you think about this sort of, because you brought up, I mean, this sort of, not trolling, but what I find amazing is that if I have like a small Facebook page, we have like, you know, 4,500 people so far, but we get lots of comments. And what really bothers me is how how fast we divided ourselves into smaller groups. So now we have the agnostics saying that atheists are obnoxious because they want to convert everybody, and atheists saying that agnostics are pussies because they don't stand up for. And now we have the humanists saying that, you know, I don't want to define myself for not believing in something, but what I stand for. And then I ask, well, what do you stand for? I stand for human rights. And they, well, I too, but I don't call myself a humanist. So therefore, I don't stand for that as well. So then
there's a huge stickler on the labels. And this is what I get hate mail for, is over the labels. Because I am each of the categories that you described. You know, I no longer say that I'm agnostic. Because I can no longer say honestly that I don't know that there's a God. I know that there's not. You know, it's become that. I mean, I've done enough research that it's not possible for me to believe that there's even a possibility of a God anymore. But for the most of my life, I would entertain a possibility, thinking that there still was one. But I've recently discovered that you know what agnostic means.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it means that you don't know, right?
Don't know.
It's people who call themselves agnostic, almost all of them, the people who call themselves agnostic, don't know that they're atheist. That's right.
Well, you know how I say it, because at least for me, the thing is, in practical terms, an atheist is someone that don't bring God into their lives. It doesn't. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I mean, people say, "No, I believe there is not. I don't believe there is no. I know that there is not." What the fuck, man? I mean,
what I get, you'll love this. You'll love this. What I get from agnostics, right? It says, "Well, just because I don't believe in God doesn't make me an atheist." Well,
I heard that all the time.
It does. Yeah, it does. Well, I said anybody that is not convinced that an actual deity really exists is an atheist. And one of the responses I got was, "Well, I'm not convinced that there is a God, but I'm not convinced there's not one either."
Well, it's just
somebody determined to sit on a fence that doesn't exist.
Well, he's determined to send an offense on the 0.000000001% of there is a God. He's like the ultimate manipulator that gets to do everything in the shadows and screw everything up. So it's not really that good of a God in the first place. But the thing is, if you go to a casino and you have to bet on the roulette, and you know that it's 99.999% of the ball hitting the zero, aren't you going to bet on that? And when you say like, well, unicorns and fairies, they have the same amount of statistical probability of existing than God, and you don't go out every day saying I don't believe in Santa Claus and in fairies. I mean, we can say that first of all, I find it really funny that even people that say they believe, and this is what drives me really mad. I have friends. I'm from a Jewish background, right? So I have friends that they don't eat pork, but they eat shrimp.
That would seem to be a contradiction. Yeah.
By the way, not for them. Yeah. So
yeah, your sound was chopping up a little bit, a little raspy. I don't know what it was to control that. I know you saw that before and fixed it, but I was just letting you know it happened again.
Okay.
So you're from Brazil and you have a Jewish background? That's curious.
Well, not really. I mean, we have a big community there. Is my son okay?
No, you're still grinding a little bit.
Okay. Let me just see if I can do something here.
Yeah. It basically takes your voice and makes it a bit more like this. Something like that.
Hold on. I don't know what can I do about that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a lag issue or not a lag. I don't know, attenuation, distortion.
Well, I'll try to speak less and let you speak more.
All right, and if it clears up, I'll let you know.
All right. So yeah, we'll just summing it up. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all at the same time, at the same side of the of this struggle. We all have a common antagonist. I mean, and instead of focusing our efforts in getting our situation better, we spend enormous amount of time in this petty little.
Yes, this has been a complaint of mine for a long time, that we're outnumbered, we're outgunned, we're certainly outfinanced, and we're overpowered, and we really need to figure out some kind of unity if we're going to have any effect. But what I've seen is people within the atheist community will judge others for restricting free speech, but then they'll also repress free speech, and then they'll judge others for othering people, or putting up categories or using labels that cause division, and they all criticize divisiveness, but they're all being divisive at the same time. And here I am. I'm one of the people that are saying, I don't care about the political differences or whatever. We got a common enemy. We have got a common goal. And I will work with Penn Jillette, even though he's a libertarian. I'll work with Bill Maher, even though he's an anti-vaxxer. It doesn't matter the differences that are irrelevant to the cause. We don't have to agree on everything. And I don't agree with anybody about everything. So that's kind of a hopeless goal anyway.
Well, I had a hard time. People really, started lashing at me because I put Cenk Uygur in the film. And,
Okay, so people have an issue with something that somebody tweeted one time or a position they held on a particular topic, and they will use that one distinction to paint the rest of that person. I can tell you that 20 years ago or 30 years ago, certainly, I was a very different person than I am now. If you'd have talked to me 25 years ago, I wouldn't have agreed with anything I'm saying today. Right?
That's why I never got a tattoo. True, it's true.
I got a few of them.
Right, but you know, every time people are like, why don't you get a tattoo? I say, well, you know, I've changed my mind. I changed my mind on so many things that I'm pretty sure that if I get a tattoo today, in 20 years, I'm gonna be hating myself for it. So that's why I didn't do it.
Yeah, if I hadn't divorced my artist, I'd probably be completely done by now.
Yeah, so you know, so people gave me a hard time because I put jank yogurt in it, and they just focus on that. And people say, you know what, I'm not going to help your campaign because you have jank yogurt in your film.
There was another conference. There was another conference that was held recently that people objected to a single speaker that was on the roster, and this is the best organized of all the annual atheist events, and there were people objected to one speaker and boycotted the event over that. And I don't know even who the speaker is or who the group is. I just know that this is the kind of thing that happens. It happened in this case, and we really need to get over that. If there's somebody there you don't want to hear from, go have drinks when they're on stage and pay attention to the rest of it. Don't sabotage the event or the movement. You know, you either participate or don't. You know, and the participation should not be negative.
Yeah, it all comes down to ego, right? I mean, people just want to feel important and stand out, and
maybe that's it.
yeah.
Maybe that's it. But I don't think that causing negativity and we can all find reasons why things won't work. We can always find something to complain about. But this has never been my mode of thinking. I mean, the motto of my podcast is that everybody complains, anybody complains, and everybody will, right? But I want to talk to the people who are actually taking action to fix things, because those are the people that I recognize as being progressive. That's why I wish that I could get Lawrence Lessig or Elon Musk or something on that like that on my podcast. But you know, I'm not Larry King.
Well, yeah, take it easy. Take it easy. You have time. Aron, I just wanted to know if you guys have questions for us. You know.
Yeah, I'm willing to take questions from your what is it, the chat room?
Yeah, but you know, just waiting for people to send them over. Come on, guys. I want to know what you want to know.
Am I able to see this chat too?
I'm not sure. You have like a bar on your right.
It's on my left.
No, you should have another one on your right. So you probably don't. Just you know, last person to say anything was Jeff. Say yeah, nice something. Like the cat. So yeah, I was about to say that too, but I didn't want to interrupt you. I'm a sucker for cats.
Too much.
No, come on. We're here to listen to you. Let me just ask you one thing. From all the people that you've interviewed so far, I mean, what was the most compelling story in terms of people that suffer discrimination? Because I mean, in my case, I mean, the most surprising interview was with Brandy Madden, David Smalley's wife. You know,
wow.
I went to his house to interview him, and he had like a massive toothache. He was taking like medicine. He said, well, I can't do the interview right now, but you should talk to my wife. And I was like, really? Okay.
Yeah, when I met him, I remember they were not together at that time. And I remember when they reunited, they were estranged for some period. And when they reunited, I got the impression that they both appreciated each other more than they had in their previous relationship. And she was able to see an aspect of him and the things that he was doing and the business that he was a part of that she was really able to appreciate. And because I'm a part of that too, I had to ask her about it. You know, how's this, huh? Because, you know, it was a good thing. It was a good event that we were at and all that. And I'm really happy that they managed to piece themselves together the way that they did. The most compelling, emotionally compelling story. That's a hard one because there have been some good ones. Sanal Adamarku, that you talked to before. I mean, he's got a really good story,
Yeah.
but then so do so many other people. When I was in Germany, I interviewed a pair of people, one from Bangladesh and one from Saudi Arabia, both telling very disturbing stories together about how they fled Islam. You know, how they faced the not just the random death threats, but the actual physical assailant, you know, with the knife in hand, and people with guns and all like that. And oh man, I can't remember her name at this moment, but there was a woman that managed to flee from Saudi Arabia to get herself into Turkey, to then have to sneak into a boat to get over to Greece. And her story was just amazing. You know, they need to make a movie out of her. You know, it was that interesting for me, and they kind of did. There was a British news story that did a kind of a live thing on her whole escape.
I watched that.
Yeah, I mean, so I've heard some really good stories, moving stories about people moving out of their belief system, moving out of oppressive regimes or whatever, or societies that are very oppressive. People that have escaped cults. I talked to somebody that was Amish and escaped from that environment, and people from extreme devout religious cults operating here in the country. You know, and there's so many different moving stories. And this is one of the things that I really like about what I'm doing right now, because I remember when 20 years ago, there was somebody did a website about conversion stories where people tell what it was that changed their mind, right? And they're so different. You never hear, I mean, you always hear that people say, well, I used to be a drug user and then I found Jesus. That's completely meaningless. And it's got the same story over and over again. But with the deconversion stories, the button that each person finds that begins to crack in the armor, that begins to shed light on their situation, it's
always a personal experience. I mean, it's not, you know, it's not what people tell you. It's something that starts to work within yourself, right?
Well, this is what's so difficult about converting people out of religious belief, is because you don't know what the button is that needs to be pushed. With my wife, I accidentally stumbled across it because she was a Christian when I met her online. And because of a conversation with me, she lost her religion over it. But and the thing that did it for her initially was the pangolin. Who would have that? You just show her a pangolin and tell her what it is. Who would have guessed that that's the thing that would have caused her to wake up and, well, wow, yeah, there's this, and so this isn't what I expected, and if that's true, then what is this? You know, and so suddenly I get a flood of questions. You know, and this is the way people kind of like come out of that, you know, that mindset where they start becoming curious, because, you know, that religion quells curiosity, right? Well, I don't need to know all that. I'm just simple folk. No, the religion wants you to believe that way. It wants obedient minions. It doesn't want thinking people who understand.
Yeah, you lose the ability to question things. Let me just acknowledge some of the stuff from the chat room. So Julie said, agnostics means to her that I believe that none of us can know whether there is a God or not. I personally believe that there is no God, but I can't prove it. So therefore, I'm an atheist and also agnostic. Okay, we just fall in the same category. Yeah, Jeff. Religious people are frightened of science bringing back extinct animals. What do you say to that?
I'm very hopeful that I've heard people say that they're going to be able to bring back dinosaurs in the next few years. That's never going to happen. Okay, they may be able to re-engineer a new version of dinosaurs, and I know that Jack Horner is actually working on a project to do this right now, using the genetics of an emu, and they found the genes to turn on teeth and to re-engage tails. They haven't found it all for the rebuilding of the hands, but all of these are dormant in the genome. If you can just find the right genes, you can actually re-engineer a dromaeosaurid out of an emu. That can be done, but it won't be the same thing.
Exactly.
It'll be a mock-up.
Yeah, just like it's easier to get like a saber-tooth tiger, you know, because we still have its relatives, right?
Well, you have its the saber the smilodons would actually be harder to do than the dromaeosaurs, but what you will end up with is something that looks like a dromaeosaur, but it's not really a dromaeosaur. It's just it sure looks like one. We would call it one, but that's not really what it is. If you got the genome of an actual dromaeosaur, which we do not have, and you were to match it up, you would see that no, this is not actually what it is. But they can make, or they're trying to make soon, mammoths. Now, they've been trying to do this for 20 years, and there have been a handful of different companies. I used to know the exact number of the different companies that tried to do this and failed, but they're still trying to re-engineer an actual mammoth. And I'm really hopeful that they will do that, because I want to see a world where we have mammoths again.
Yeah, me too. Judy said, agnostics mean to me that we don't know how is God, or if there is a God or not, and nobody can know for sure. I believe that God is everything, everybody, but I don't know. If God exists, fine with me. If He does not, it's fine with me as well. Well, okay, it's her opinion. Yeah. Okay.
To her, I would say, yes, you can be agnostic and accept that no one can know anything about supernatural, because the only way to know things is to be able to demonstrate that knowledge. If you can't demonstrate the knowledge, then you don't actually have that knowledge, right? So I grant that. But atheism, if we're making a distinction between agnosticism and atheism, you know,
you can apply that to anything, right? You can apply that to anything.
To some things, but for atheism, as distinguished from agnosticism, atheism is simply whether you believe. Are you convinced? I mean, a belief is a conviction, so a lack of belief is a lack of conviction. Are you convinced that an actual deity really exists? And it has to be a deity, because we're talking about a God. Now, I've had people say, well, I believe there's something. Well, big deal. We all believe there's something, but is it a God? Is it a magical, anthropomorphic immortal? You have to be specific on that. So if you're not convinced that there is a magical, anthropomorphic immortal, what we would identify as a God, if you're not convinced of that, then you're atheist.
And then we get to the semantics, right? Because Phil Zuckerman says something in his interview that is really funny and interesting, which is, I mean, let's be clear. When we talk about God, we talk about the biblical God. I mean, this is God. Because sometimes people say, oh, to me, God is love. I said, no. Love is love. God is God, you know? So don't try to work your way around it. I mean, we're talking about fucking God, okay? And that's it. No, God is, because Jesus is love.
There was a poll done a few years ago that I thought was fascinating, because they said they're asking an organization of scientists. I don't remember which organization it was, but the simple question: do you believe in a God? And they specified what they meant by God by saying, or higher power. And obviously in the question, they meant that the higher power would be their definition of God, right? So the God is the higher power, but the scientists didn't take it that way. So you had a number, like 20% of these scientists who did believe in a higher power, but did not believe in a God. So you actually had more people believing in the higher power than believe in God. And then you have another set that didn't believe in the higher power either, but they made a distinction. So what is the higher power? The higher power could be Spinoza's and Einstein's God, which is just the God that is revealed through the laws of nature and is not a personal deity. And maybe this is a deistic sort of a God. This could also be something akin to the Force, although I think most scientists that hold to this higher power thing really are just looking at the laws of the universe and the way that they're constructed, but certainly do not owe any credence to creationism and the biblical God, because less than 1%, in fact, almost 1/10 of 1% of all of the earth and life scientists hold any credence for creationism at all. This is according to a comparison between the total number of scientists, the Steve Project, and I don't know if you're familiar with Project Steve. I'll be happy to explain it if you're not. And then okay, and then there was this other group where the Discovery Institute had raised some 700 scientists, many of whom were actually medical doctors or mathematicians or whatever. They weren't actually scientists. Many of them were not actually scientists, but they had 700 people say that they were skeptical about atheism, or excuse me, skeptical about evolution. Well, everybody's skeptical about evolution. The way that the question was worded, I would have signed it, okay? But that doesn't mean that I have any doubt at all about the fact that evolution happens, or that it's a thing that's
the only reason we accept evolution is because we were a skeptic in the first place. I mean, this is how science works, for crying out loud.
So the Discovery Institute chose these 700 people and presented these 700 signatures as scientists who dissent from Darwinism, which was not formed in the question. And many of the people, if they'd seen their signatures according to the headline that they put on it, they would have disagreed and said, pulled their signatures out, because no, I'm not dissenting. That doesn't mean that I don't think that we evolved. I know that we evolved, and I can prove that we evolved. Take my signature out of that. But without any of those omissions, let's just say we just give them all 700 of those scientists. And if we give them all 700, well, we know that's not true, but if we give them all 700, out of the 480,000 or something close to that number, to my memory, when you compare all those, the number of actual scientists to the number that say they dissent from Darwinism, what you get is 0.14% if you're talking about geologists and biologists collectively. Wow. So I often say that if belief in evolution, if science is if 99.4% is pure, the way it is in the silver trade, then Bill Maher was correct when he said that the evolution is accepted by the entire scientific community, because it is more than 99.44% of scientists accept evolution, whereas this pitiful few don't. And the pitiful few do not dissent for reasons. The pitiful few dissent because they've been taught to believe in a compilation of fables, that the fables have to be the absolute truth. And if you find proof that the fables are wrong, you have dogma written into it that you cannot accept the proof, that the Bible has to trump all the evidence. And some of them actually say that as much.
Let me just mention something that Jeff is asking here. Could God be a type of collective consciousness instead of a man in the sky concept?
And then now we're getting into the force, which is another option for the higher power. But then we have to have a means of collecting the consciousness. Now, we know how communal organisms like bees or ants, for example, communicate, and how they become like a hive mind, but humans don't have that same trait. So how do we qualify to create this unifying entity? We do not have telepathic powers. We do not have spiritual or psychic empathy. These things are not really real. And I used to believe in souls. I used to believe in psionics. I used to think that we did have telepathy and telekinesis and all of these other powers of the mind. I mean, everybody did. People who watched Star Trek, most people thought that everybody had these latent or inherent, empathy powers and Spock's mind meld and telekinetic abilities. That all of these, you would just need to train yourself and adapt and be able to develop those skills. No, we don't have them. There's not even an ability for us to have them. There's not a mechanism that allows that to be. So, no, the short answer is God cannot be.
And whenever people mentions, theories like that, I always say, because God could be this, could be that. I say, okay, it's an energy that is everywhere. Okay, but does it answer to your prayers? Does it have a consciousness in the sense that, okay, because energy. Oh, I have energy running through. I mean, electromagnetic.
That's another one that gets me when people, especially when the New Age people start talking about energy.
And when they throw quantum physics in it. Oh, quantum physics explains astrology. Now we can.
I love it when they say energies, like in plural, right? Energies, and they talk about these energies and these vibrations. And I remember this one presentation this woman was doing. I was watching it on video. I was wishing that I was in the audience, because I knew how to destroy everything she just said. And I would just simply raise my hand and say, is this measured in newtons or in ohms? Because it's not measured at all. It's completely made up. And the only way to really expose that is to show that there is no kind of metric that the people are saying that's there, but they can't verify it. They can't validate it. They can't indicate it. There's literally not a there.
And this is another subject that I find really interesting, is that sometimes people, they give up on God and religion, but they cannot give up on superstition and this kind of hocus pocus, kind of tarot cards and
I can't criticize people like that, because it would be hypocritical of me, because I went through that route. I mean, I know a lot of people who did. They came out of the mainstream Abrahamic religions and they go into other religions, or they go into the solitary practitioner, neo-Wicca, pseudo-Hindu, whatever, I knew people that went the druid route, you know, whatever. And there's a number of different ways that you can do this to explore before you eventually come away realizing that all of it is bullshit. And not everybody gets to that final point where they realize that all of it is bullshit and that they're okay with it.
And for me, it's one of the side effects of, we mentioned the crutches, you know, like, you know, how people use crutches. Religion becomes a crutch, and for me, the worst. I mean, I have the moral crutch in which people just can't realize that you can make decisions based on your own terms. You know, you need, you know, the book telling you what's wrong and right, and therefore they think that nobody else can, you know, can make that as well. But for me, what hurts the most is like when people feel that without these sort of supernatural things, life and is not surprising, is not awesome, is not amazing enough. You know, so people say, "Oh, but I feel like it's kind of lacks something." You know, life is so much more interesting when you have like energies and blah blah blah. And this. I mean, it makes me sad actually, because life is great.
Believe me, I've heard the same thing. I've heard Oprah Winfrey say that atheists can't experience the awe.
Yeah, I saw that too.
And I'm thinking that woman has never watched an episode of Cosmos. I mean, we experience awe and wonder because in order to experience those things, you have to have a metric of something real to compare something else to. You can't just make up stuff that's, oh, God is bigger than big and older than old and stronger than strong. What the hell does that even mean, right? Infinite in every direction that one can exaggerate. No, we need to have some kind of grasp of reality in order for something else that exceeds our current understanding to impress us. You know, that requires knowledge. Belief just doesn't get it. And I've been told that skeptics are cynics and that we miss out on the skeptics being cynical, miss out on the bigger picture or the brighter colors that only the believer can truly appreciate. No, it's because the believer is pretending, quite literally pretending to know things that no one can even know. Pretending things are true that aren't true, you know, that they can't be true, and pretending things are not true that definitely are. I mean, it's a matter of reality denial. And I understand the psychological buffering for it, though I never required that for myself. The reason that I believed all these things is because I had been fooled. I've been fooled by all those people's stories about what they found. You know, I'm watching pseudo documentaries and things like this, and I'm listening to people's anecdotal stories. Before I learned to think skeptically, I was believing all these things that I wanted to believe, that I liked to believe, that I thought made the world more interesting. And then realizing how none of that was true was disappointing at first, because they say that, truth is good, but truth also hurts. The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. You know, this is important. And when people cling to their religious beliefs for various emotional reasons that I can't relate to, you know, and people will tell me, well, I just have to believe because I want to know that when I die, I'll be able to see my son again. I can't speak to that. But however meaningful that is to that other person, that person needs to understand that it is meaningless to me. You know, and there's no way I can even empathize because there's no part of that that's true. And the only thing that we can say is true are the things that we can show to be true. And if you can't show it to be true, then it's not.
And there's so many groups out there making money out of this feeling,
yes.
Right? So,
yes.
Well, Sam said, I'm also agnostic on the existence of unicorns, but I still regard myself as a unicornist. Well, and now I think we have to address Josh because, listen to this. I have not told my family that I'm an atheist, grew up evangelical, and just tell them that I don't know for sure one way or the other. I feel like a coward now after hearing this webinar, so it's on us.
Well,
so how do I tell them without being hurtful that I believe there is no God? Oh boy.
Well, while I admire him for not wanting to be hurtful of his family, he needs to understand that many families have been hurtful to their kids who have said this sort of thing. And even if you're an adult, the family can still be hurtful to you. So weigh whether you have to say that. And the only thing I can say about, if you have to say that to your family, you can be as respectful as you like, but I don't think they'll always take it as respectful. This is going to be a very it has to be very tactfully worded. And for me, I think one of the best possible dodges for that is to say that, I can only believe what is indicated, and I cannot make myself believe what is not evidently true. Some paraphrase of that might work for you. Hopefully.
Josh, if you still have time, if you just wanted to share, how old are you? And I mean, you're like a teenager, still with your parents, but sometimes, I mean, just as Aron said, I mean, sometimes you better keep it to yourself, because we heard stories.
At least until you're in college.
Yeah, well, you know the story of Damon Fowler, right? I mean,
yes.
So you got kicked out of his house.
If he had only waited till they sent him off to college, he'd be set.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people say that, that when their kids go off to college is when they stop believing, and that is true. But there's a lot of people that didn't believe in the first place that just couldn't say it until they got to college.
It's true. And Jeff is saying, don't say anything until you're beyond your vested interest in living with them.
Yep.
Yeah, we can all agree that. Aron, I just wanted to thank you so much. I think we went longer than we expected, but I mean, it was so nice talking to you. I just wanted to thank everybody for showing up. And let's keep in touch, because we have an interview for the documentary, right?
Oh yes, that's right. We do. When is that?
Probably in mid-August, but I'll get back to you. Let me just read this from Julie. Josh might also make sure that his family loves him unconditionally before opening up to the conversation. That's always a good move.
Very good advice. Yes.
Yeah. So Julie, Jeff, Josh, Sam, Judy, thank you all. Thanks again.
Tell him you're gay first. That'll soften the blow.
That's the best strategy I've ever heard. All right, so have a good night, everyone. Aron, thanks a lot again.
Thank you.
All right, have a good one.